Okay, so in the last video, we talked about the stride and load, and just a quick recap. Stride and load is just that front foot going forward, the hand setting back, me getting ready to hit the ball. Despite all the differences in how an athlete gets ready, the one thing that's um, absolutely 100% constant is where they're at when their front heel hits the ground. So just a quick review: when the front heel hits the ground, toe, heel, right? My feet are outside my shoulders. My knees are inside my feet. My head is in the middle of my body. The knob of my bat's pointing down at the catcher. We talked about some more particulars with the stride and load, but just as a base review, when that front foot lands, we go heel, toe. I'm sorry, toe, heel. And my feet are outside my shoulders. My knees are inside my feet. My head is in the middle of my body, and the knob of my bat's pointing down at the catcher. From a slightly different perspective, you can see posture in the stride and the load is really, really important. When that front heel lands, and I'll draw this again just so you can see it really clearly. I'm in this really good athletic position. We call it a hip hinge, where my hip point sets back behind my shoulders and my knees. It's a universal athletic position. When we're getting ready to hit, we want to get ready in the most athletic position possible. So you can see Big Poppy's in this really, really strong athletic position. Similar to all these guys and all great hitters. Feet are outside his shoulders, knees are inside his feet, head is right in the middle of his body, and the knob of his bat's pointing down at the catcher. Okay, so as we move on to the rotation part of the swing, we're going to talk about lower half mechanics, upper half mechanics, and then some connection issues when it comes to staying connected bat and body. So the first thing we'll talk about is the rotation of our hips. I think for some reason, a lot of us make lower half mechanics super complicated when it's actually a pretty simple thing. I think when we're talking about lower half mechanics, I think about controlling my head and a simple merry-go-round rotation. So all we're doing is rotating around my head. And if we watch here, all that happens is belt buckle turns to baseball and the head stays on that line. So we've rotated the hip, we've stayed over that line, and you can see my hip is now where my belt buckle was, and my knee is now under my hip. My head is above my hip, right in that nice straight line. And that shows me that we were able to stay balanced as we turned. My head didn't move forward, my head didn't move backwards. If we continue all the way to contact, we stay on that line in rotation. Yeah, so the lower half is just a merry-go-round where you get on the horse and you just do a circle, right? We don't go around and forward. We don't go around and backwards. We simply go around. Does that sound about right, Jackie?
Yeah.
Okay, we watch Josh Donaldson as well. I'll draw some lines on his head, roughly here. And we're going to watch, all that's going to happen is his belt buckle is going to turn just like a merry-go-round. He's just going to turn in this area here. Super, super simple, right? Not trying to make it super complicated. Everything rotates here. Head stays on that line. Your hip here takes place of where your belt was. And without talking about pitch location or anything like that, just try to keep the hips super, super simple. We're not going around and forward. We're not going around and backwards. We're simply going around in the same spot, kind of tethered to this pole right here. If I can control my head and I can keep my lower half turn simple, that's what I want my lower half to do. Anything you want to add, Jackie?
Yeah, one thing, just to allow the force that needs to happen with the rotation, because it is a violent move with the lower half. If you notice their front legs, that when they stride, they don't land, they land firm with their front leg. So we have to hit into what we say a firm front side. It's not totally locked out when they land, and it's not, and you're not soft. So your knee has the front side supports all that the violent action from the back side. So it has to be a firm front side. And then if you watch, Greg can show you, as they get just to contact, that's when the leg fully will lock out or completely firm up, but it happens just before contact.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because a lot of guys land either with a really soft front side. So as they get into rotation, their knee continues to flex and bend, and that allows the transfer of energy to move forward as opposed to around. But you can see how he's firm on his front leg, but he's not locked out. There's still some flex in his knee. It's really athletic. It's athletic in his back knee as well. And it's not until, still athletic, still some flex in his knees. It's not until about here where his front leg stiffens up and prevents his upper body and his head from bolting forward. Okay, so that's lower half mechanics for dummies. I want to talk real quick about upper half mechanics, which is a little bit more complicated. If I think about the lower half as moving in a circle here, just your merry-go-round, your upper half mechanics are a little bit more like a Ferris wheel, where a Ferris wheel, you kind of go up and around. So if we watch Mike Trout's front shoulder, let's start here. When my front foot lands, we'll notice that Mike Trout's back shoulder is above his front shoulder, right? And that's consistent with all these guys. If we look at Josh Donaldson, when his front foot lands, his back shoulder is above his front shoulder, right? If we look at Carlos Correa, who's got the simplest move of all of them, his back shoulder is above his front shoulder, kind of angled in this direction. And what we'll see from all of them is as they start to rotate, this back shoulder is going to come under his front shoulder, and his front shoulder is going to move towards his front ear in kind of this direction. So if your lower half is like a merry-go-round, just going in a circle like this, your upper half is a little bit more like a Ferris wheel, where your back shoulder is going to come underneath your front shoulder, and your front shoulder is going to pull back to your ear. And we'll kind of watch how that happens real quick. Front shoulder is going to move to your ear. You can see it kind of turning in this direction. Back shoulder is coming underneath. You can already see it where his back shoulder is now creeping under his front shoulder, and that will continue to happen. I'll take some of these drawings off so you can see a little bit more clearly. And at this point, his back shoulder is underneath his front shoulder. His front shoulder is pulled back to his ear to allow him to get into rotation and allow him to get his shoulders on plane and bat on plane. We'll talk about that in a second, but just to show you from a different angle, you can see Josh Donaldson's shoulder is going to work down and under. His front shoulder is going to work back to his ear as he gets to contact. And one more example, front shoulder is going to work under, front shoulder is going to work back to his ear as he gets to contact. And then just from another angle, we talked about Big Papi's spine angle. But if we think about it in terms of shoulder plane, we're going to see his back shoulder gets underneath his front shoulder. We can already see it here as he gets to contact. Now, the reason that's important is because in order to hit line drives, we have to hit the ball at a positive trajectory off the bat. And all that means is if I hit a ball that's going down off my bat towards the ground, that's a negative trajectory. We're going to see ground balls, obviously. If I hit a ball that's parallel to the ground, even if I hit it really hard, if you consider gravity, it's going to hit the ground before it hits an infielder. So what I'm trying to do is hit line drives over the infield's head. In order to do that, I need to be coming slightly uphill with my bat as I get to contact. So I want that bat behind the ball coming slightly uphill as we get to contact. In order to do that in a strong position, we want to get our shoulders on plane with the ball. And all that means is we got to have an angle like this with our shoulders, because our bat is going to mirror our shoulder angle. So if I get my back shoulder under my front shoulder, what that allows me to do is get the bat working slightly uphill through the baseball. Right? What most coaches refer to when they're talking about dropping your back shoulder or collapsing on my backside comes from my shoulder getting underneath my front shoulder too early. So if my back shoulder gets underneath my front shoulder in the stride and load phase, right, that's me dropping my backside, and I'm gonna have some connective issues when it comes to rotation and to hitting the baseball. I want my back shoulder to be above my front shoulder when my front heel lands. And now as I go into rotation, I want my back shoulder to work underneath my front shoulder so that I can get to the baseball coming slightly uphill. Jackie, does that make sense?
Yeah, can I I want to add one thing about the back elbow. You notice on all three of these guys, when they start, their elbows are different spots. Donaldson's elbow is really high when he starts his load and stuff. But the key is when your front foot, when your heel gets down, your elbow should be at least level with your back shoulder, or just slightly below your back shoulder. Because if not, it causes too much of a loop as we get in the rotation. So you notice he brings his elbow down as the foot strikes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, I want to do one more video after this about staying connected into rotation. Jackie, you on board for one more?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll call you right back.
Sounds good.